Before Patrick Mahomes, before the deep shots, before Kansas City became the most explosive offense in football, they were known for something else. For years, the franchise built its identity on the ground: power football, ball control, and a steady line of dominant running backs. Priest Holmes, Larry Johnson, and Jamaal Charles. Different eras, different styles, same results: production, touchdowns, control. For over a decade, Kansas City was a running back factory and produced one of the most dominant runs ever for running backs. It all started in the early 2000s under head coach Dick Vermeil. Vermeil believed in a physical offense, strong line play, and a controlling tempo of the game. And when Priest Holmes arrived in Kansas City, everything clicked. The crazy thing was, he wasn't even a superstar yet when he got there. Undrafted out of the University of Texas, his college career would be under the shadows of the great Ricky Williams. And in 1997, the Ravens would sign him as an undrafted free agent, but he wouldn't see the field that season. In 1998, Priest Holmes would get his chance as a starter, and would compile a 1,008-yard rushing season with 7 touchdowns and only being the starter for 13 out of the 16 games, taking full advantage of his opportunity, finally emerging from the shadows. In 1999, injuries would hinder his availability, and once again he found himself as the number 2 back, behind Eric Rhett, where his numbers would drop to just 506 yards rushing, 1 touchdown, and only being the starter for 4 out of the 9 games that he played that year. But one number did stand out. While Priest struggled with his availability, when he was active, he was explosive, averaging an insane 5.7 yards per carry. In 2000, a new coach came to Baltimore, Brian Billick, and his agenda was to find a younger, more reliable running back, and would draft premier power back Jamal Lewis. Once again, Holmes found himself in the shadows of greatness. Throughout the year, he was used as a change of pace back, and he finished out the season proving to be productive, with 588 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. The Ravens that year were one of the most dominant teams in NFL history, and would find themselves in the Super Bowl. Priest Holmes once again shined when the odds were stacked against him. Despite being the number 2 back all year, he would proceed to shred the Giants' defense with 20 carries for 107 yards and a touchdown, once again proving he was worthy of a starting role. Now as a free agent and coming off a Super Bowl win and a great playoff run, he looked to find a new home where he'd be the number 1 back. Enter Dick Vermeil and the Kansas City Chiefs. Vermeil had a history for reviving players that were once written off. His system was old school and built the offense around the run game, the perfect storm for a hungry back wanting to prove himself. Behind one of the best offensive lines of football, Holmes became the centerpiece, patient, powerful, and relentless near the goal line. Over his career with the Chiefs, Holmes rushed for over 6,000 yards and scored 76 rushing touchdowns, becoming one of the league's most productive backs. But it was a 3-year stretch that was one of the greatest ever in NFL history. In 2001, he ran for 1,555 yards and 24 touchdowns. In 2002, he followed it with over 1,600 yards rushing and 21 touchdowns. And in 2003, he set an NFL record with 27 rushing touchdowns. For a stretch, he wasn't just good, he was unstoppable. Every drive ran through him, and every red zone trip ended with him, and the Chiefs built their identity around it. But football moves fast, and when injuries began to slow Holmes down, Kansas City didn't need to search for their next star. They already had him. Coming out of Penn State, Larry Johnson was one of the most dominant running backs in college football, rushing for over 2,000 yards in a single season and finishing as a Heisman finalist. Big, physical, and built to carry a full workload, he entered the NFL with expectations. But just like Priest Holmes, he was the number 2 back for 3 out of his 4 years in college. When his number was finally called, he took the college football world by storm. Kansas City drafted him in 2003, but just like Priest was in Texas and Baltimore, he was in the shadows of greatness. But once his opportunity came, he was ready to dominate. Larry exploded onto the scene, highlighting his physical, punishing, and relentless running style, and the team around him reflected that philosophy. A physical offense built to control the tempo and wear defenses down over 4 quarters. Everything still ran through the ground game. Over his career with the Chiefs, Johnson rushed for over 6,000 yards and scored 55 touchdowns, becoming another workhorse in Kansas City's system. And at his peak, his numbers were massive. In 2005, he exploded for 1,750 rushing yards and 20 touchdowns. In 2006, he followed it with nearly 1,800 yards rushing and 17 touchdowns. Back-to-back seasons carrying the offense almost entirely on his shoulders. Even as the coaching staff changed from Dick Vermeil to Herm Edwards, the philosophy stayed the same. Run the football, control the clock, and wear teams down. As the league slowly started to shift towards the passing game in the late 2000s, Kansas City found another back. This one brought something completely different. Jamaal Charles didn't just look like the backs that came before him. At Texas, he was known for his speed and explosiveness. Charles wasn't built like a traditional workhorse, but his blistering speed made him dangerous every time he touched the ball. Kansas City drafted him in 2008, and when he became the focal point, everything changed. This wasn't power, this was speed. One cut, one miss angle, and the play was over. Charles would take it to the house. But what made Charles different from the backs that came before him was how he could attack the defense. Holmes and Johnson controlled the games over time. Charles could flip a game instantly. He didn't need long drives or heavy volume, he just needed space. And it wasn't just on the ground. He could take a handoff 60 yards or catch a swing pass and do the same thing. That ability forced defense to account for him on every snap. He wasn't just a running back, he was a dual threat weapon. Over his career in Kansas City, Charles rushed for over 7,200 yards and scored 43 rushing touchdowns. He also caught nearly 300 passes for 2,400 receiving yards and adding an additional 20 touchdowns through the air. He could beat you in multiple ways, and because of that, Charles helped redefine the position. His ability to dominate both as a runner and a receiver became the new standard for the modern-day running back. At his peak, he became the entire offense. In 2010, he ran for nearly 1,500 yards while averaging an absurd 6.4 yards per carry, one of the highest marks ever for a starting running back. He wasn't just grinding out yards, he was creating explosive plays every time he touched the ball. In 2012, just a year after a major ACL tear, he returned to the gridiron again and would rush for over 1,500 yards, showing the same blistering speed and explosiveness like nothing had changed. Still, he wasn't always put in the same conversation as other elite backs. The Chiefs weren't always contenders. The offense around him lacked consistency, especially at quarterback. The Chiefs at the time were playing quarterback roulette, and because of that, the spotlight never fully matched the production, but on the field, his impact was undeniable. He wasn't just efficient, he was one of the most explosive players in football, and by 2013, everything had come together. Andy Reid was signed as the new head coach of the Chiefs. The structure would be completely changed. With Alex Smith being brought in at quarterback, it would provide consistency and command missing from teams prior. With the true quarterback one, the Chiefs started to become contenders once again. Coach Reid drew up the perfect scheme to get Charles the ball in space, not just with runs, but with screens, checkdowns, and mismatches. He became the focal point in every aspect of the offense. In 2013, he scored a total of 19 touchdowns and carried the offense both as a runner and a receiver. The identity was still built around the running back, but it included explosiveness and versatility. Through the coaching changes, roster changes, and shifting of eras, the results stayed the same. Another elite back, another offense built around the run, but this time with a new swagger. Holmes, Johnson, Charles. 3 different eras, 3 different styles, but the same identity. From Dick Vermeil's power football, to the Herm Edwards ball control approach, to the early Andy Reid years featuring Charles, Kansas City kept producing elite back year after year. Then, in 2017, everything changed once again. A new quarterback would arrive in Kansas City when the Chiefs would move up in the draft and select Patrick Mahomes out of Texas Tech. Mahomes brought a revolution through the air. With his gunslinger mentality and big arm talent, the game opened up. The offense became explosive, and Kansas City became known for something completely different. The Chiefs would begin a modern-day dynasty. With a high-powered offense fueled by deep passes and explosive plays, the Chiefs started to take the NFL world by storm. With Patrick Mahomes at quarterback and a superstar tight end named Travis Kelce, the Chiefs would go on to win 3 Super Bowls in 5 years. But before the MVPs, before the Super Bowls, before the dynasty, Kansas City built its reputation on the ground. For more than a decade, they didn't just create one great back, they created star after star, year after year. From 2001 to 2016, these backs would compile an incredible 19,300 rushing yards, 174 rushing touchdowns, with over 6,000 receiving yards, an additional 45 touchdowns through the year. A 15-year stretch of running back domination. Before Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City was a running back factory.